The classroom door clicked shut with a sound that seemed louder than usual that Tuesday morning. Ms. Rebecca Harper set her canvas tote bag on the desk and looked out at the rows of small faces staring back at her. 23 first graders, each one a world of possibility, each one deserving of safety and care. She had been teaching for 11 years, long enough to recognize when something was off, when a child's silence meant more than shyness. Her eyes swept across the room and landed on Lily Chen, seated in the third row by the window. The 6-year-old sat completely still, her hands folded on the desk in front of her, her gaze fixed somewhere in the middle distance. Miss Harper felt that familiar tug in her chest, the one that told her to pay attention. The morning announcements crackled through the speaker mounted near the ceiling. Principal Morrison's voice filled the room with reminders about the upcoming book fair and picture day. Miss Harper watched Lily during those 2 minutes. The little girl didn't move, didn't fidget like the others, didn't turn to whisper to the classmate beside her. She just sat there, frozen. When the announcements ended, Miss Harper smiled at her class. "Good morning, everyone. Let's start with our morning circle. I want everyone to come sit on the carpet, please." Chairs scraped against linoleum. Children bounced up with the kind of energy that only 6-year-olds possessed at 8:30 in the morning. All except one. Lily remained in her seat, her expression unchanged. "Lily, sweetheart, we're gathering on the carpet now," Ms. Harper said gently. The little girl's eyes flickered with something that looked like fear. She stood slowly, so slowly, moving like someone 3 times her age. Each step seemed calculated, careful. Miss Harper noticed how Lily avoided putting her full weight down, how she winced almost imperceptibly with each movement. "Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy educational stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too." The morning routine continued. Ms. Harper led them through calendar time, weather observations, and a read aloud from their current chapter book. Throughout it all, she kept returning her attention to Lily. The child sat at the edge of the carpet, her posture rigid, her face carefully blank. When Miss Harper asked questions, hands shot up around the circle. Lily's remained in her lap. This wasn't new. Lily had been like this for weeks now, maybe longer. Miss Harper tried to pinpoint when exactly the change had happened. Lily had started the school year bright-eyed and eager. She'd raised her hand for everything, volunteered to hand out papers, chatted with her classmates during center time. Somewhere around October, that had begun to fade. Now, in late November, the little girl seemed to have retreated into herself completely. At first, Ms. Harper had assumed it was adjustment. First grade was harder than kindergarten. Some kids needed more time to adapt. Then she'd wondered about illness. Maybe Lily was fighting off something, tired and worn down. She'd even pulled Lily aside one afternoon in early November. "How are you feeling, honey?" Ms. Harper had asked, crouching down to Lily's eye level. "Are you okay?" Lily had nodded quickly, too quickly. "I'm fine, Ms. Harper. You can always talk to me if something's bothering you. You know that, right?" Another rapid nod. "Yes, Ms. Harper." That had been 3 weeks ago. Things had only gotten worse since then. Now, watching Lily sit motionless on the carpet while the other children sprawled and stretched and moved freely, Miss Harper felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. This wasn't shyness. This wasn't illness. This was something else entirely. The morning progressed into math time. Miss Harper had the children return to their desks to work on counting exercises. She walked between the rows, checking work, offering encouragement, answering questions. When she reached Lily's desk, she stopped. The uniform. Lily wore the same navy blue jumper she'd worn yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. Miss Harper was certain of it now. The same jumper with the same small stain near the hem, the same slight tear in the pocket. The white shirt underneath looked gray with wear, the collar wrinkled and dingy. Miss Harper had made a note about the uniform a week ago, but she'd convinced herself she might be mistaken. Kids' clothes looked similar. Maybe the Chens had bought multiple uniforms in the same size. But no, she could see it clearly now. Same stain, same tear, same everything. "Lily, how's your counting going?" Miss Harper asked, keeping her voice light and warm. Lily looked up at her with those dark, serious eyes. "Okay. Do you need any help?" "No, thank you." The words were polite, automatic, rehearsed. Miss Harper wanted to say more, wanted to ask the questions building up inside her, but this wasn't the time or place. Not with 22 other students who needed attention, not in the middle of a lesson. She moved on, but her mind stayed with Lily. At 10:15, the class transitioned to reading centers. Ms. Harper divided the children into groups, assigning them to different stations around the room. Lily ended up at the listening center with 3 other students. They were supposed to put on headphones and follow along with an audiobook, but Ms. Harper noticed Lily struggling with her headphones. The little girl kept adjusting them, pulling them away from her head slightly, wincing. Ms. Harper walked over. "Do those not fit right, Lily?" "They're okay," Lily whispered, but she continued holding them slightly away from her ears. "Here, let me see." Ms. Harper reached out to help adjust the headband, and Lily flinched backward so sharply she nearly knocked over her chair. The other children at the center looked up, startled. "I'm sorry," Lily said quickly, her voice tight with something that sounded like panic. I'm sorry. It's all right, sweetheart. It's okay." Ms. Harper held up both hands in a calming gesture. "I didn't mean to startle you. The headphones seemed uncomfortable, that's all." Lily's breathing was rapid, her small chest rising and falling quickly. She clutched the headphones against her stomach and nodded, not meeting Ms. Harper's eyes. Ms. Harper felt her concern deepen into something sharper, more urgent. That reaction had been pure fear. She'd seen startled children before, jumpy kids who'd been surprised or caught off guard. This was different. This was the reaction of a child who expected to be hurt. She made a mental note to document this incident in Lily's file after school. She'd been keeping casual notes, but it was time to make them official. Time to follow protocol. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of lessons and activities. Lunch came at 11:30. The class lined up at the door, chattering and excited about whatever mystery meat the cafeteria was serving today. Miss Harper walked them down the hallway to the lunchroom, keeping Lily in her peripheral vision the entire time. The little girl walked at the back of the line, her steps still careful and measured. When they reached the lunchroom and the children scattered to their usual tables, Ms. Harper watched Lily collect her tray and find a seat at the end of a long table. She sat down with the same slow caution she'd shown all morning. Ms. Harper had lunch duty this week, which meant she'd be supervising in the cafeteria instead of taking her own break in the teacher's lounge. Normally, she minded this duty, the chaos of 100 children eating and talking all at once, but today she was grateful for it. It gave her a chance to observe. She positioned herself near Lily's table and watched. The little girl ate mechanically, small bites, her attention fixed on her tray. She didn't talk to anyone. No one talked to her. It was as if she'd become invisible to her peers. Mrs. Patterson, one of the lunch staff members, came over to Miss Harper with a concerned expression. "Can I talk to you for a second?" "Of course." Mrs. Patterson lowered her voice. "It's about one of your students, the little Chen girl." Ms. Harper's attention sharpened. "What about her?" "She's been taking extra fruit from the line, not eating it, just putting it in her pockets. I've noticed it a few times this week, and yesterday she tried to take crackers from the extra bin." I didn't say anything because, well, maybe she's just hungry, but I thought you should know. Food hoarding. Ms. Harper added this to the growing list in her mind. Thank you for telling me. I'll look into it. Mrs. Patterson nodded and moved away. Miss Harper turned her attention back to Lily, who was now carefully wrapping an apple in a napkin and sliding it into the pocket of her jumper. The pieces were coming together, forming a picture that Miss Harper didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. The same uniform worn day after day, the careful movements suggesting pain, the flinching away from touch, the food hoarding, the withdrawal from her peers, the fear in those dark eyes. When lunch ended and the class returned to their classroom, Miss Harper had them settle down for quiet reading time. She sat at her desk and pulled out her phone, typing a quick email to Mrs. Rodriguez, the school counselor. They needed to talk. Today. The afternoon crawled by. Science lesson about plant growth. Art project involving construction paper and glue sticks. Cleanup time. Throughout it all, Ms. Harper kept detailed mental notes about every interaction with Lily, every behavior, every sign. At 2:45, she dismissed the class. Parents and guardians waited in the pickup line outside. School buses rumbled in the parking lot. Children grabbed their backpacks and flooded toward the door, ready for freedom. Lily was the last to leave. She gathered her things slowly, methodically, as if dreading what came next. Ms. Harper wanted to stop her, wanted to ask her to stay, wanted to demand answers to the questions burning in her mind. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not without following proper procedures. Have a good afternoon, Lily, Ms. Harper said as the little girl passed her desk. Lily looked up at her, and for just a moment, Ms. Harper saw something in those eyes. A plea. A desperate, silent cry for help. Then it was gone, shuttered behind that blank expression, and Lily walked out of the classroom and down the hallway toward whatever waited for her outside. Mrs. Harper stood alone in her classroom, the silence pressing in around her, and made a decision. Tomorrow she would act. That evening, Miss Harper sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold beside her laptop. She'd opened a new document and titled it, Observations Lily Chen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she organized her thoughts, trying to be objective, trying to document facts rather than fears. But the fears kept creeping in. She began typing, listing everything she'd noticed over the past weeks. The dates mattered. Documentation required specifics. October 15th, first noticed Lily becoming withdrawn during group activities. October 22nd, Lily asked to stand during story time, claimed her chair was uncomfortable. November 3rd, Lily wore the same uniform 3 days in a row. November 8th, noticed Lily flinching when classmate tried to hug her. November 14th, Mrs. Patterson reported food hoarding. The list grew longer. Each item by itself might mean nothing. Together, they formed a pattern that made Ms. Harper's chest feel tight. She pulled up the school district's safeguarding guidelines, reading through the procedures for reporting suspected abuse or neglect. She'd been through this training every year since she started teaching, but she'd never actually had to use it. She'd always been the teacher who heard stories from colleagues, who thought, thank God that's never happened in my classroom. Now it was happening, and the weight of responsibility felt crushing. Miss Harper's phone buzzed. An email from Mrs. Rodriguez, the school counselor. Can you come by my office first thing tomorrow morning? 7:30. We should talk before classes start, Miss Harper typed back immediately. Yes, thank you. She closed her laptop and stared at the wall of her kitchen. Outside, the November darkness had settled in completely. Somewhere out there, Lily was spending another night in whatever situation she was living through. Miss Harper felt helpless, furious at her own powerlessness to do anything right this second. Wednesday morning arrived cold and gray. Ms. Harper got to school at 7:15, her stomach in knots. She found Mrs. Rodriguez already in her office, a steaming mug of coffee in her hands and concern etched on her face. "Thank you for coming in early," Mrs. Rodriguez said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I read your email last night. Tell me everything." Ms. Harper laid it all out. She spoke for 20 minutes straight, describing every observation, every incident, every moment that had raised her concern. Mrs. Rodriguez listened intently, taking notes, asking occasional clarifying questions. When Miss Harper finished, Mrs. Rodriguez set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. "Rebecca, you were right to come to me. This is serious. We need to follow protocol exactly. If we see visible signs of abuse or neglect, we're mandated to report it immediately. But right now, what we have is behavioral indicators. They're significant, but they're not the same as physical evidence." "So what do we do?" Ms. Harper asked. "We watch closely today. We document everything. If Lily shows any physical signs, anything at all, we act immediately. If she doesn't, we still file a report with Child Protective Services based on the behavioral patterns, but they'll investigate on their own timeline. The challenge is that behavioral indicators alone can sometimes be explained away by parents. We need something concrete." Ms. Harper felt a flash of frustration. "So we just wait, while she's potentially being hurt? No, we stay vigilant. We create opportunities for Lily to trust us, to tell us what's happening. And if we see anything physical, we document it immediately and make that call. I know it feels like we're not doing enough, but we have to follow the process. It protects the child in the long run and ensures our report will hold up if legal action is needed." Ms. Harper understood the logic, but it didn't make her feel any better. She left Mrs. Rodriguez's office and headed to her classroom, flipping on lights and preparing for the day ahead. The students arrived at 8:15. Ms. Harper stood at the door, greeting each child by name as they entered. When Lily appeared, Ms. Harper's heart sank. The little girl was wearing the same uniform, 4 days now, maybe more. "Good morning, Lily," Ms. Harper said warmly. "Good morning, Ms. Harper." The response was automatic, emotionless. As Lily walked past her into the classroom, Miss Harper caught a smell. Unwashed clothing, unwashed body. It wasn't overwhelming, but it was there, unmistakable. She added it to her mental documentation. The morning routine began. Calendar, weather, morning message on the board. Miss Harper kept her teaching on autopilot while her attention focused on Lily. The little girl moved through the activities like a ghost, present but not really there. During phonics lesson, Miss Harper had the children work in pairs on word-building exercises. She'd strategically paired Lily with Emma, one of the kindest children in the class, hoping the pairing might draw Lily out a bit. She walked around the room, checking on each pair, and stopped near Lily and Emma's table. "How are we doing over here, girls?" Ms. Harper asked. Emma looked up and wrinkled her nose slightly. She glanced at Lily, then back at Ms. Harper. "We're okay." Lily didn't react. She kept her eyes on the letter tiles in front of her, arranging and rearranging them without really forming words. Ms. Harper noticed Emma scooting her chair slightly away from Lily. The smell, she realized. Emma had noticed it too. Ms. Harper felt a wave of sadness for Lily, for the isolation she must feel, for the compounding effects of neglect. Not only was she suffering at home, but that suffering was following her to school, pushing her further from her peers. "Lily, can you show me a word you've made?" Ms. Harper asked gently. Lily's hands stilled over the tiles. She looked up at Ms. Harper with those serious, guarded eyes. "I can't think of one." "That's all right. Let's try together. What sound does this letter make?" Ms. Harper pointed to the letter C among the tiles. "Ku," Lily whispered. "Good. And this one?" "Ah." Great. Can you put them together? Lily slowly pushed the C and A together, then added a T. Cat. A simple word, but she'd done it. Miss Harper smiled. Perfect, Lily. That's wonderful. For just a second, something flickered across Lily's face. Pride, maybe, or pleasure at being praised. Then it was gone, and the mask slipped back into place. The morning continued. Math time came around, and Miss Harper gave the children worksheets to complete independently. She sat at her desk, ostensibly grading papers, but really watching Lily. The little girl worked slowly, erasing and rewriting her numbers multiple times. Her pencil grip looked awkward, tense. At 10:45, Ms. Harper announced it was time for recess. The children erupted in excitement, jumping up and racing toward the cubbies to grab their jackets. It was cold outside, but not cold enough to keep first graders indoors. Lily stood slowly from her desk. She walked to her cubby and reached for her jacket, a thin windbreaker that looked inadequate for late November weather. As she pulled it on, she grimaced, and Miss Harper saw it clearly this time. The wince of pain. Something hurt. Something on Lily's body hurt enough that putting on a jacket caused visible discomfort. Miss Harper walked over quickly. Lily, honey, are you all right? Lily looked up, startled. Yes. I saw you make a face just now. Does something hurt? No. The answer came too fast. I'm fine. Ms. Harper wanted to push, wanted to demand the truth, but the other children were watching, waiting by the door to go outside. She couldn't make a scene. Not here, not now. Okay, Miss Harper said slowly. But if anything is bothering you, you can always tell me. Always. Lily nodded and followed the other children out the door. Miss Harper trailed behind them to the playground, her mind racing. She positioned herself near the swing set, where she could see most of the playground. The children scattered immediately, some to the slides, some to the climbing structure, some to the open field to play tag. Lily walked slowly to a bench near the fence and sat down carefully. She didn't play, didn't run, didn't interact with anyone. She just sat there, watching the other children with an expression that might have been longing. Miss Harper pulled out her phone and, as discreetly as possible, made notes about what she'd just observed. The pain when putting on the jacket, the isolation during recess, the inadequate winter clothing. 20 minutes later, she herded the children back inside for lunch. The routine repeated. Tray collection, table selection, mechanical eating. Ms. Harper watched from across the cafeteria. Lily ate her sandwich slowly, then carefully wrapped her cookie in a napkin and slipped it into her pocket. More food hoarding. After lunch, back in the classroom, Ms. Harper had the children settle down for quiet reading time. Each child had a book bin with selections at their reading level. The room grew quiet as they settled in with their choices. Ms. Harper walked around, checking that everyone was engaged, and stopped at Lily's desk. The little girl wasn't reading. She was sitting perfectly still, staring at an open book in front of her, but her eyes weren't moving across the pages. She looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her skin looked pale, almost grayish. Lily, Ms. Harper said softly, crouching beside the desk. Are you feeling okay? You don't look well. Lily blinked slowly, as if pulling herself back from somewhere far away. I'm tired. Did you not sleep well last night? A pause. I slept. You know, if you're not feeling well, you can go see Nurse Morrison. She might want to check your temperature, make sure you're not coming down with something. I'm fine. Again, that automatic response. I don't want to go to the nurse. The firmness in Lily's voice caught Miss Harper off guard. It was the most emotion the child had shown in weeks, and it was resistance to the idea of seeing the nurse. That alone was telling. Most kids enjoyed trips to the nurse's office. It meant getting out of class, maybe getting to rest on the cot, maybe earning sympathy and attention. Lily didn't want any of that. She wanted to stay invisible. "All right," Miss Harper said gently, "but the offer stands if you change your mind." The afternoon dragged on. Social studies lesson about communities, writing practice in their journals, cleanup time. Finally, dismissal at 2:45. As the children filed out, Miss Harper called out, "Lily, can you stay back for just a moment, please?" Lily froze. The other children flowed around her like water around a stone, exiting into the hallway. When the last one had gone, Lily slowly turned to face Miss Harper. "Am I in trouble?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "No, sweetheart, not at all. I just wanted to check on you. You seem like you haven't been yourself lately, and I'm concerned about you." Lily stared at the floor. "I'm okay." "Lily, look at me, please." The little girl raised her eyes slowly. Miss Harper saw fear there, yes, but also something else. Resignation. As if Lily had already accepted that her life was what it was, and there was no point in hoping for anything different. If something is wrong at home, if someone is hurting you or not taking care of you the way they should, you can tell me. I promise you'll be safe. But I need you to talk to me. For a long moment, Lily said nothing. Miss Harper held her breath, hoping, praying the child would open up. Then Lily shook her head. "Nothing's wrong. I'm fine. Can I go now? I'll miss my bus." Miss Harper wanted to scream. She wanted to shake the truth out of the universe, to make everything right immediately. But all she could do was nod. "Yes, go ahead. Have a good afternoon." Lily grabbed her backpack and hurried out of the classroom. Ms. Harper stood alone again, surrounded by empty desks and the lingering smell of childhood, and felt more helpless than she'd ever felt in her life. She pulled out her phone and texted Mrs. Rodriguez. "We need to talk. Today." Mrs. Rodriguez met with Ms. Harper after school in her office. The counselor's face was grave as she listened to the day's observations. "The pain when putting on the jacket is significant," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "The repeated uniform, the smell, the food hoarding, the exhaustion. Rebecca, we're looking at clear signs of neglect, possibly worse. I think we're at the point where we need to act more directly." "What do you suggest?" Ms. Harper asked. "Tomorrow, if you see any opportunity to observe physical signs without violating her privacy or dignity, we need to take it. If there's a legitimate reason for a clothing check, something that follows safeguarding protocol, we should pursue it. We need another adult present, preferably female, and we need Lily's consent. But if we find anything, we call CPS immediately." Ms. Harper nodded. "I understand. I'm going to start the paperwork for a formal concern report tonight. If nothing concrete emerges by Friday, we'll submit it anyway based on behavioral indicators, but I'm hoping we don't have to wait that long." That night, Ms. Harper barely slept. She tossed and turned, playing out scenarios in her mind. What if they found nothing? What if Lily was just a messy kid with poor hygiene habits? What if Ms. Harper was seeing abuse where there was only ordinary family struggles? But then she'd remember the fear in Lily's eyes, the careful way she moved, the desperate hoarding of food, and she knew something was deeply wrong. Thursday morning arrived. Miss Harper got to school early again, feeling a mixture of dread and determination. She prepared her classroom mechanically, arranging materials for the day's lessons, writing the morning message on the board, organizing papers. All the while, her stomach churned with anxiety. The students arrived. Lily walked in wearing the same uniform. 5 days now. The smell was stronger today. Several children wrinkled their noses as they passed Lily's desk. Ms. Harper's heart broke a little more. The morning routine began. Ms. Harper taught with half her attention while the other half stayed fixed on Lily. The little girl seemed even more withdrawn today, if that was possible. She didn't respond when called on during calendar time. She didn't participate in the morning discussion. She simply existed, a small, sad presence in the back of the room. At 9:30 during literacy centers, it happened. Ms. Harper had assigned Lily to the reading corner, a quiet space with pillows and a bookshelf. 3 other students shared the space, sprawled on cushions with their books. Lily sat on the floor near the wall, her book unopened in her lap. Then, without warning, Lily slumped sideways. Her head hit the wall with a soft thud, and she slid down until she was lying on her side on the carpet. "Miss Harper," Emma called out, "something's wrong with Lily." Miss Harper was across the room in seconds. She knelt beside Lily, who was conscious but dazed, her eyes unfocused. "Lily? Lily, can you hear me?" "I'm okay," Lily mumbled. "Just dizzy." "When did you eat last?" Miss Harper asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "I had lunch yesterday." Yesterday. It was now 9:30 in the morning, nearly 24 hours since this child had eaten. Miss Harper felt rage kindle in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "Okay, sweetheart, let's get you up slowly. Can you sit?" With Miss Harper's help, Lily managed to sit upright, leaning against the wall. The other students watched with wide eyes. Miss Harper pulled out her phone and hit the intercom button that connected directly to the main office. "This is Ms. Harper in room 204. I need assistance immediately. One of my students is unwell." Within 2 minutes, Mrs. Rodriguez arrived. She took one look at the situation and made a decision. "I'll stay with the class. You take Lily to the nurse's office." "The nurse is out today," Miss Harper said. "She's at a training." Mrs. Rodriguez and Miss Harper exchanged a look. This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for. "Then take her to the conference room," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "I'll call Mrs. Chen from the main office and ask her to come in. In the meantime, we need to make sure Lily's okay." Ms. Harper helped Lily to her feet. The little girl swayed unsteady. Miss Harper put a gentle hand on her back to support her, and Lily gasped in pain. Actually gasped, a sharp intake of breath that made several students look over in alarm. "Lily?" Miss Harper's voice was tight. "What hurts?" "Nothing. I'm fine. I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. That gasp had been real pain, not just discomfort. Ms. Harper's mind raced. They were past the point of waiting. Something was wrong right now, and they needed to know what it was. "Come with me, sweetie. Let's get you somewhere quiet where you can rest." Ms. Harper guided Lily out of the classroom and down the hallway to the conference room, a small space used for parent meetings. She settled Lily into one of the chairs and pulled out her phone again, texting Mrs. Rodriguez. "We need to check for injuries." "Now." "Can you come?" Mrs. Rodriguez texted back. "Getting coverage for your class. Be there in 3 minutes." Miss Harper crouched in front of Lily. "Honey, I'm very concerned about you. You're clearly in pain, and I need to make sure you're not injured. Would it be okay if Mrs. Rodriguez and I checked to see if you're hurt anywhere? We won't do anything that makes you uncomfortable, and we'll be very gentle. Is that all right?" Lily's eyes filled with tears, the first real emotion Ms. Harper had seen from her in weeks. "Please don't," she whispered. "Please. Sweetheart, I promise we're only trying to help. We won't hurt you, but I need to make sure you're safe. Can you trust me?" A tear slipped down Lily's cheek. She looked so small, so fragile, so utterly defeated. Then, barely perceptibly, she nodded. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived moments later. She closed the conference room door behind her and came to stand beside Miss Harper. "Hello, Lily. Miss Harper told me you're not feeling well. We want to help you, okay? We're going to be very careful and very respectful. Is it okay if we check to see if you have any injuries?" Another tiny nod. "Okay. I'm going to ask you to stand up and turn around so we can look at your back. We won't touch you without asking first." Is that all right?" Lily stood slowly. She turned around, facing away from them. Ms. Harper and Mrs. Rodriguez exchanged another look. This was it. "Lily, I'm going to gently lift the back of your shirt just a little bit, okay? Just enough to see if there's anything we need to help with." "I'll be very careful." Lily didn't respond, but she didn't refuse. Mrs. Rodriguez carefully grasped the hem of Lily's shirt and lifted it slowly. What they saw made Ms. Harper's breath catch in her throat. Bruises. Multiple bruises in various stages of healing, from deep purple to sickly yellow-green. They covered Lily's lower back and sides, but that wasn't the worst of it. There were marks, red and angry, that looked like welts. And there was something else. A rash spreading across the skin, the kind that came from wearing dirty clothes too long, from not bathing, from neglect. Mrs. Rodriguez's hand trembled slightly as she lowered the shirt back down. She looked at Ms. Harper, and Ms. Harper saw her own horror reflected in the counselor's eyes. "Lily," Mrs. Rodriguez said, her voice carefully controlled, "have you been hurt? Did someone do this to you?" Lily's shoulders began to shake. Sobs came then, wrenching, desperate sobs that seemed to tear themselves from somewhere deep inside her. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Ms. Harper moved around to face Lily and dropped to her knees, bringing herself to the child's eye level. "Sweetheart, no. You have nothing to be sorry for. You didn't do anything wrong. Nothing that happened to you is your fault. Do you understand me?" But Lily kept crying, kept saying she was sorry, kept breaking apart right there in the conference room. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out her phone. "I'm calling CPS right now, and an ambulance. She needs to be seen by a doctor immediately." Ms. Harper gathered Lily into her arms, carefully, mindful of the injuries, and held her while she cried. The little girl was so light, so thin. How had Ms. Harper not noticed before? How had any of them not noticed? "You're safe now," Ms. Harper whispered into Lily's hair. "I promise you're safe now. No one's going to hurt you anymore." Mrs. Rodriguez spoke urgently into her phone, giving details to the emergency dispatcher. When she hung up, she made another call, this one to Child Protective Services, explaining the situation, describing what they'd found. Through it all, Lily cried in Ms. Harper's arms, years of pain and fear and loneliness pouring out all at once. The ambulance arrived within 15 minutes. 2 paramedics, a man and a woman, entered the conference room with professional efficiency and gentle voices. They examined Lily carefully, documenting the injuries, checking her vital signs. The female paramedic spoke softly to Lily the entire time, explaining what she was doing, praising Lily for being so brave. "She's dehydrated and malnourished," the paramedic said quietly to Miss Harper and Mrs. Rodriguez. "And those injuries need proper treatment. We're taking her to County General. CPS will meet us there." As they loaded Lily onto a gurney, the little girl reached out for Ms. Harper. "Don't leave me," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. "Please don't leave me." Ms. Harper took her hand. "I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." She looked at Mrs. Rodriguez. "Can I go with her?" "Yes, I'll handle everything here. Go. She needs you." Miss Harper climbed into the ambulance, never letting go of Lily's hand. As they pulled away from the school, sirens wailing. Miss Harper looked down at the little girl and made a silent promise. Whatever came next, whatever investigation unfolded, whatever consequences followed, she would make sure Lily knew she was believed, she was valued, and she was worth protecting. At the hospital, doctors examined Lily thoroughly while Ms. Harper waited in the hallway, pacing like a caged animal. A social worker from CPS arrived, a tired-looking woman in her 40s named Susan Graham. She introduced herself to Ms. Harper and asked for a detailed account of everything that had led to this moment. Ms. Harper told her everything, every observation, every incident, every sign she'd noticed over the weeks. Susan Graham took notes, asking pointed questions, building a case. "The mother has been contacted," Susan said when Ms. Harper finished. "She's on her way here now. We'll be questioning her thoroughly. Based on what you've described and what the doctors are finding, I suspect we'll be removing Lily from the home immediately." "What will happen to her?" Ms. Harper asked. "She'll go into foster care while we investigate. We'll do a home visit, interview the mother, talk to neighbors and other family members. If we find evidence of abuse or willful neglect, we'll pursue criminal charges." An hour later, a woman rushed into the emergency room waiting area. Ms. Harper recognized her from parent-teacher conferences at the beginning of the year. Mrs. Chen looked frantic, her hair disheveled, her eyes wild. "Where's my daughter?" she demanded at the reception desk. "Where's Lily?" Susan Graham approached her calmly. "Mrs. Chen, I'm Susan Graham from Child Protective Services. We need to talk." "What happened? Why is my daughter here? No one will tell me anything." "Your daughter was brought in because she collapsed at school. The doctors are examining her now. Mrs. Chen, we've found evidence of significant neglect and possible abuse. I need you to answer some questions." Mrs. Chen's face went pale. "Neglect? Abuse? That's ridiculous. Lily's fine. She's perfectly fine." "When was the last time you gave your daughter a bath?" Susan asked. Mrs. Chen hesitated. "I don't know. A few days ago, maybe a week." "When was the last time you changed her clothes?" Another hesitation. "She has uniforms. She wears them to school." "The same uniform every day for at least 5 days, according to her teacher. When was the last time you fed her a proper meal?" "She eats." "She eats breakfast and dinner every day." Susan Graham's expression hardened. "Mrs. Chen, your daughter told the paramedics that she hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday at school. She's severely dehydrated and malnourished. She has multiple bruises and welts on her body. She has a skin infection from wearing dirty clothes for an extended period. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is serious." Mrs. Chen's face crumpled. "You don't understand. I work 2 jobs. I'm barely home. I do the best I can. Lily knows how to take care of herself. She's a smart girl. I leave food out for her. I leave clean clothes. If she's not eating or changing, that's her choice." Ms. Harper felt anger surge through her. "She's 6 years old," she said, her voice shaking. 6. She's not capable of taking care of herself. She's a child." Mrs. Chen turned on her. "Who are you?" "You're her teacher. You're the one who called CPS. How dare you interfere with my family? You have no right." "I have every right," Ms. Harper shot back. "I'm a mandated reporter. When I see a child being harmed, I'm legally required to report it. And thank God for that, because Lily could have died. Do you understand that? Your daughter could have died from your neglect." "I love my daughter." Mrs. Chen's voice rose to a shout. "I work myself to death to provide for her. I'm doing everything I can. Working 2 jobs doesn't excuse leaving a 6-year-old to fend for herself," Susan Graham said firmly. "It doesn't excuse not feeding her, not bathing her, not caring for her basic needs. Mrs. Chen, I'm removing Lily from your custody effective immediately. She'll be placed in foster care while we investigate." "No. No, you can't do that. She's my daughter. You can't take my daughter." "I can and I am. You'll have the opportunity to contest this in court. But right now, Lily's safety is my primary concern. If you want to see her, you'll have to go through the proper channels." 2 police officers appeared then, flanking Mrs. Chen. Susan had called them as backup. Mrs. Chen looked between them, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. Then she crumpled, sinking into a chair and burying her face in her hands. Ms. Harper watched this unfold with a mixture of emotions: anger at the mother's excuses, sympathy for whatever circumstances had led to this point, and overwhelming sadness for Lily, caught in the middle of adult failures. A doctor emerged from the examination area. "Are you the family members?" Susan Graham stepped forward. "I'm with CPS. This is the child's teacher. What's her condition?" The doctor's expression was grim. Besides the dehydration, malnutrition, and the obvious external injuries, we found evidence of old fractures that healed improperly. A rib, possibly broken months ago. The bruising is extensive and consistent with repeated trauma. The skin infection is moderate but treatable. Psychologically, this child has been through significant trauma. She's going to need extensive therapy. Mrs. Chen let out a sob from her chair. The police officers shifted slightly, ready to intervene if needed. "Can I see her?" Ms. Harper asked the doctor. "She's asking for you. Come with me." Ms. Harper followed the doctor through the double doors into the examination area. They passed curtained-off sections until they reached one at the end. The doctor pulled back the curtain, and Ms. Harper saw Lily lying in a hospital bed, an IV in her arm, her small body almost swallowed by the white sheets. "Lily, you have a visitor," the doctor said gently. Lily turned her head, and when she saw Ms. Harper, tears filled her eyes again. "You came back." "Of course I came back." Ms. Harper moved to the bedside and took Lily's hand carefully. "I told you I wouldn't leave you." "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby, you're not in trouble. You never were. None of this is your fault. My mom is really mad. I heard her yelling." Ms. Harper chose her words carefully. "Your mom is upset, but that's not your fault either. Grown-ups make choices, and sometimes those choices have consequences. What's important right now is that you're safe and you're getting the help you need." "Where am I going to go?" Lily's voice was so small, so scared. "The doctors want to keep you here overnight to make sure you're okay. Then you're going to go stay with a nice family who will take care of you while everything gets sorted out. It's called foster care. Have you heard of that?" Lily shook her head. "It's temporary, just until we figure out what's best for you. But I promise you'll be with people who will feed you good food, give you clean clothes, and make sure you're safe and healthy." "Will I come back to school?" "I don't know yet. Maybe a different school, depending on where you're staying. But that's okay. You're going to be all right, Lily. You're going to heal, and you're going to be happy again." Lily squeezed Ms. Harper's hand. "Thank you for noticing me. Nobody else did." The words hit Ms. Harper like a physical blow. She blinked back tears. "I'm so sorry it took me so long. I should have acted sooner. I should have protected you better." "It's okay. You saved me. That's what matters." They sat together in silence for a while, just holding hands. A nurse came in to check Lily's vitals. The social worker stopped by to explain what would happen next. Through it all, Ms. Harper stayed right there, a steady presence in the chaos. Eventually, visiting hours ended. Ms. Harper had to leave. She hugged Lily goodbye, promised to visit again soon, and walked out of the hospital into the cold November evening. She sat in her car for 10 minutes, letting the tears come, letting the weight of the day crash over her. Then she drove home, made herself eat something even though she wasn't hungry, and sat down at her laptop to write a detailed incident report. Every moment, every observation, every word needed to be documented for the investigation and potential trial. The next few weeks unfolded in a blur of police interviews, CPS meetings, and court appearances. Ms. Harper testified about what she'd seen, about the pattern of neglect, about the moment they discovered the injuries. Mrs. Chen's lawyer tried to paint Ms. Harper as overreacting, but the medical evidence was undeniable. The investigation revealed more than Ms. Harper had known. Mrs. Chen did work 2 jobs, sometimes gone from 6 in the morning until 11 at night. She'd leave Lily alone in the apartment with minimal food and no supervision. When she was home, she was exhausted and irritable. The injuries had come from a belt when Lily had gotten into trouble for various small infractions, making messes or being too loud or asking for things Mrs. Chen couldn't afford. Neighbors admitted they'd heard crying sometimes, had seen Lily sitting alone in the apartment window at odd hours, had suspected something wasn't right but hadn't wanted to interfere. "We thought maybe it was just a struggling single mom," one neighbor said. "We didn't know it was that bad." The tragedy of it all was that Mrs. Chen genuinely seemed to think she was doing her best. She wasn't a monster. She was a deeply overwhelmed woman who'd made terrible choices and convinced herself they were justified. That didn't excuse what she'd done, but it added layers of complexity to a situation Ms. Harper wished could be simple. Lily was placed with a foster family, the Johnsons, a middle-aged couple with experience in caring for traumatized children. Ms. Harper was allowed supervised visits once a week. The first time she visited Lily at the Johnsons' home, she almost cried with relief. Lily looked different. She was clean, wearing clothes that fit, her hair brushed and pulled back in a neat ponytail. She smiled when she saw Ms. Harper, an actual, real smile. "Look at my room," Lily said, grabbing Ms. Harper's hand and pulling her down the hallway. The room was small but cheerful, painted yellow with white furniture. A bookshelf held children's books. Stuffed animals sat on the bed. Art supplies covered a small desk. "It's beautiful, Lily. Do you like it here? Mrs. Johnson makes really good pancakes, and Mr. Johnson taught me to play checkers. And there's another foster kid here, a boy named Marcus who's 8. He's nice. He lets me play with his action figures." The transformation was remarkable. This was a different child from the one Miss Harper had known in her classroom. Or maybe it was the same child, finally allowed to be herself, without fear or hunger or pain weighing her down. Over the following months, Lily continued to heal. She started therapy twice a week. She went to a new school closer to the Johnsons' home. Ms. Harper visited when she could, following the approved schedule, watching Lily grow more confident, more joyful, more like a normal 6-year-old. Mrs. Chen lost custody permanently. She was charged with child endangerment and neglect. She received a suspended sentence with mandatory parenting classes and supervised visitation rights that she rarely exercised. She seemed to fade from Lily's life, unable or unwilling to do the work needed to be a proper parent. The Johnsons expressed interest in adopting Lily if parental rights were terminated. The process would take time, but it gave Lily stability, a place to belong. One day in April, Ms. Harper visited Lily and found her playing in the backyard, running through a sprinkler in the spring sunshine. The little girl was laughing, spinning with her arms outstretched, completely carefree. It was the first time Ms. Harper had heard her laugh since those early days of first grade before everything went wrong. Mrs. Johnson stood beside Miss Harper on the porch, watching. "She still has nightmares sometimes," Mrs. Johnson said quietly. "And she hoards food in her room, even though we've told her she'll always have enough to eat. But she's getting better. Day by day, she's getting better. She's lucky to have you," Ms. Harper said. "We're lucky to have her." Mrs. Johnson smiled. "She's a special little girl, resilient, brave. What you did for her, recognizing the signs, pushing when everyone else might have looked away, you saved her life." Ms. Harper shook her head. "I just did what any teacher should do." "Maybe. But a lot of teachers don't. A lot of people don't. You saw her when she didn't want to be seen. You kept looking when she tried to disappear. That matters." Lily ran up to them then, dripping wet and grinning. "Ms. Harper, will you play with me?" "Of course, sweetie." Ms. Harper let Lily drag her into the yard, into the spray of the sprinkler, into the simple joy of a child playing without fear. That evening, as Ms. Harper drove home, she thought about all the children in her classroom over the years. How many had she missed? How many silent signals had gone unnoticed? She couldn't change the past, but she could be more vigilant going forward. She could remember that behind every quiet child, every withdrawn student, every kid who tried to disappear, there might be a story that desperately needed to be heard. She thought about Lily, about the long road ahead for that little girl. Recovery would take years. The effects of trauma and neglect would shadow her development, but she had a chance now. A real chance at a healthy, safe, loved childhood, and that was everything. Back at school the following Monday, Miss Harper stood at her classroom door, greeting her students as they arrived. She looked at each face, really looked, trying to see beyond the surface, trying to notice the things that others might miss. Because that was her job, wasn't it? Not just to teach reading and math and science, but to protect the vulnerable, to speak for the voiceless, to be the adult who actually paid attention. One uniform, one teacher, one life changed. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person willing to look, to see, to act. One person willing to be uncomfortable, to push past excuses and barriers and their own doubts. One person willing to stand between a child and harm and say, "No more." Ms. Harper would carry Lily's story with her forever, both as a reminder of failure, all the weeks she'd observed without acting decisively, and as proof of possibility. Proof that intervention matters. Proof that speaking up can save a life. Proof that sometimes the most important thing a teacher does has nothing to do with lesson plans or curriculum standards. Sometimes the most important thing is simply refusing to look away. If you've watched this story to the end, we hope it's reminded you that awareness can save lives. If you suspect a child is being neglected or abused, please report it to the proper authorities. In the United States, you can call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-422-4453. Don't assume someone else will act. Be the one who speaks up. Please take a moment to like this video if it impacted you. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that matter, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment telling us your thoughts, or if you're a teacher, share your own experiences with recognizing the signs of abuse or neglect. Thank you for watching, for caring, and for being the kind of person who refuses to turn away from difficult truths. Together we can make sure no child suffers in silence. Together we can be the adults who actually see,